Saluton, and welcome to the latest in our Esperanto 101 series, Building Even More Words. We're going to just cut to the chase with this episode and start with the suffix that everyone hates. The suffix in makes a noun feminine, and a lot of people are annoyed by the fact that the word for woman is literally derived from the word man. Viro is man, virino is woman, patro is father, patrino is mother, frato is brother, fratino is sister, filo is son, filino is daughter, knabo is boy, knabino is girl, edzo is husband, edzino is wife. You can understand with the progress feminism has made in the 20th century why people would be annoyed with that. It is I don't have a good thought here. I'll just have to delete this bit as I collect my thoughts. A lot of people believe it would be nice if the word for a man and the words for different types of relations and kin were gender neutral. And then if you needed to specify which gender it was, if there were two suffixes, masculine and feminine. Now, in modern Esperanto, that is to say, as it's been spoken in the last few decades, the words for professions are epicene, that is to say, they are not gender specific. Although when the language was first created, there was an assumption that the people described by professional words were masculine, and if you had a feminine example, you would need to use the "in" suffix. This even applied to such words as secretary and teacher, because of course the language was created in the late 1800s, and the notion that secretaries and teachers tend to be women is a bit of an American 1950s stereotype. So all professions initially defaulted to masculine, but in modern Esperanto usage, they really don't. Now, professionals are just professionals. A dentist is a dentist. An instruisto is a teacher. An esperantisto is an esperantist. There isn't a need to specify what gender the person is. No one cares. They care that you can teach or be a dentist or be an esperantist. I don't know how many anti-feminists there are in the Esperanto community. I couldn't possibly say. I know that there certainly is a good portion of feminists in the community who would like this to change. Others are more accepting. Even some female Esperantists have said, you know what, this is no big deal. This is just how languages worked at the time. And this made the language easier to learn because you didn't have to learn a different root for sister versus brother. You know, you didn't have to have like a word like sororo or something, or a word like matro for mother. It's just take father and flip it. So there are varying degrees of annoyance with this problem. Only a small set of nouns are still taken in the last few decades to imply masculinity, but they are important ones. Viro, and all the basic words for kinship, father, brother, etc. There is no accepted solution to this, but again, there have been proposals. Perhaps the most widely known one is this. The proposal would be that the roots would take on non-gender specific meanings, like vir would simply mean an adult human being, pater would simply mean a parent, frat would simply mean a sibling, and so on. And then you could use ino if you want to specify that the person was feminine, or you could use a new suffix each to signify that the person is masculine. So a father would be a patricio, a mother would be a patrino, and a parent whose gender you don't care about would be a patro. This proposal is called ichismo, or ichism, but it has not yet been widely accepted by the Esperanto community, and it's not clear that it ever will be. So, regrettably, that's really all I have to say about this particular gender issue in Esperanto. I sit here as a white man, and it's very easy for me to say, well, this is just the way the language was created in the 1880s. It's no big deal. It doesn't, it shouldn't be taken to belittle you or anything. It's very easy for me to say that, but I'm not and never will be a female Esperantist. I don't know what it's like to say that, the word that describes me is derived from somebody else who actually gets the root word. So, I'm not going to sit here and pontificate about how people should just get over it. I'm merely observing that there is some grumbling about this in the Esperanto community, but the community has not come to a consensus about how to fix this or if it should be changed at all. Ig and ij are two additional suffixes that are much less politically controversial, but they can be a little tricky just to learn. If you have a word that is not really a verb at all, or if you have a verb that is intransitive, like halti, which means to come to a stop, it doesn't mean to stop someone else, it means to come to a stop. Or if you have a verb that is transitive, but you want to make a new verb from it that means to cause that other verb to happen, you can use the suffix ig to form a verb with the infinitive suffix e after that. So halti would become haltigi, which would be to indeed make someone else stop or something else stop. Construi becomes construigi, to cause to build. Pura, the adjective for pure and clean, becomes purigi, to purify something or cleanse something. Seca, dry, would become sekigi, which means to dry something. Conversely, the suffix eg with the circumflexed g means the opposite. It means to become something rather than to cause something. So it turns something that is already transitive into something that's intransitive. So naski is the verb for to give birth to something. You give birth to a child. Naskiji is the verb meaning to be born yourself. I was born. Naskigis. Ano is a member of a group. And so aniji is to become a member, to join or enroll in a group. Pura, once again, is pure and clean. So purigi is to purify or cleanse oneself, or to become clean, as opposed to purigi, which is to make something else clean. And seka, again, sekiji would be for something to become dry itself, for to dry out. You don't usually say, I dried out the fruit. You don't dry out something else. Drying out is something that happens to the thing itself. So those two suffixes are quite useful, but unfortunately they're so similar, just differing by the circumflex, that it can be tricky to keep them straight. Also, I snuck something in there that you may have noticed. The word ano is a member, but didn't you see an as the suffix in the previous video for the adherent of a group, like a cristano is a Christian? Yes, you did. And the reason why is this. All of the Esperanto affixes are roots and can be used as such. You can build words entirely out of those affixes. Here's some examples. Remember the suffix ach, which means that something is messy or flawed or coming apart at the seams. Well, add the suffix ig, which means to cause something. And then you would have a verb achigi, which means to make something a mess. Then you add the suffix aj, which means to which means the manifestation of something. And so o after it to make it a noun, achigajo, a complete mess, the manifestation of making something messy, achigajo. Ina is the simple adjective for feminine. You just take the suffix that makes something feminine, treat it as a root onto itself, and make it an adjective. So you could say la ina cevallo, the female horse, instead of having to say la cevallino. Estraro. Esther, remember, was a leader or a boss. R, remember, forms a group. So an estraro is a group of leaders, a board of directors, or an oligarchy. If we take that word and then add the ayo suffix, which is a place for something, we now have a boardroom, an estrareo, the place where the leaders meet. We could modify estre with in to make it female leaders, and then make it an estrinarieo, and then put pra on the front to make it ancestral, and so then we would have pra estrinarieo, which would be a boardroom for one's female ancestors. It's goofy, but I'm doing it to make the point. And finally, some people rather snarkily use the term malino for male. It's turning the whole female is derived from male thing on its head. It's taking the female word and using the opposite prefix on it. So now masculine is derived from feminine. So malino. In response to a question from someone who's been learning Esperanto, I wanted to take a moment to have a sidebar about the imperative and using the imperative with pronouns, as I did in my slides about it. The person asked, if you're going to say stop her, rather than saying she haltu, in other words, cause her to stop, wouldn't it be more correct to say haltu sheen? Stop as a command being issued just to the person you're talking to, with her as the direct object. And unfortunately, as I noted before, halti is an intransitive verb and it cannot take a direct object. It means come to a stop. It doesn't mean stop something else. So haltu sheen is actually probably going to be understood by someone if you're shouting it in the heat of the moment, but it's still not technically good grammar. Whereas my thought, she haltu, which is the imperative but being used on she as the subject instead of you, it's definitely grammatically correct, but it could mean let her stop, right? If I say ni learnu, it means let's learn, we ought to learn. If I just say she haltu, it means, hey, she ought to stop. It doesn't really necessarily mean you, guard, stop her now, right? So it's a little unclear whether she haltu would actually convey the meaning I intended. I think it would, again, if you were sort of shouting it in the heat of the moment, she haltu. But then again, so would haltu sheen. It's just the latter is not grammatically correct. The former is grammatically correct but weird. The most correct way to say it, when you definitely mean, I want you to make her stop, is haltigu sheen, which I am now able to unveil because you've seen the suffix ig in this video. Haltigu sheen, cause the stopping of her. Okay, so we have to talk about a little bit of an uncomfortable topic here in this episode. In the next one, we're going to be talking about euphony, a little rule that you can do to make things sound better if necessary, particularly in poetry. We're going to talk about the reflexive pronouns, and we're going to talk about just one more way in which the accusative case is used. Don't panic. Dankan pro lo spectato.